let me teach you a Japanese word. Kaizen. Kaizen. Actually, it's more than just a word. It's an entire philosophy. It means continuous improvement, making something better over time. That perfectly describes the R35 Nissan GT-R. It arrived way back in 2008 and changed everything. It made us all rethink how fast and effective a road car could be. But 12 years in the car world is an age. In that time, Porsche has replaced the 911 with a new model twice. Having once been a technological tour de force, the GT-R is now looking like an old dinosaur. Nissan has dropped these very hardcore Nismo models in throughout those 12 years, always with the same philosophy, Kaizen, tweaking, honing and refining the GT-R on an annual basis, constantly upping power output and fiddling with suspension settings.
But rumour has it that 12-year cycle of continuous improvement ends here with the 2020 GT-R Nismo. Who knows, maybe Nissan will do a limited edition model with a plaque to say farewell to the R35 GT-R. But as far as engineering is concerned, this could be the end of the road. The 2020 GT-R Nismo was first shown at the New York Auto Show in April 2019, but because of everything that's been going on since then, only now is the car arriving in the UK.
This is the lightest GT-R yet, although it's still pretty chunky at 1700 kilograms. A carbon fibre roof and bonnet, plus carbon ceramic brakes bring the overall weight down by 30 kilograms compared to the previous GT-R Nismo. It means Nissan's engineers have been able to wind the spring and damper rates back slightly to improve comfort levels and make the Nismo more usable. How about this for a piece of Kaizen? The Dunlop track day tyres have one fewer groove in them to increase the contact patch by 11% and improve grip.
The interior of the R35 GT-R. After all these years, it's so familiar to me now that being in here is like being in my living room. I've sneered at GT-R interiors in the past. They have sometimes had quite patchy build quality, flimsy materials and so on. But ever since that big facelift they did a couple of years ago, this infotainment system is good. The switch gear here for the ventilation controls, they feel really nice. This one has got Alcantara across the dash and leather here. It actually feels really good in here. I love the seating position. I love the steering wheel, Alcantara again, and a nice thin rim. That's lovely to hold. These Recaro seats are new. They're stiffer than the Recaro seats that you had in the previous Nismo, but they're also lighter. That's really clever. They're supportive and they're comfortable. Yeah, it's now a really good cabin, this. There's not much to dislike. I've always loved this bank of toggle switches along the bottom here for the four-wheel drive system, the dampers and the stability control. Note, very optimistic use of the word comfort. Optimistic because the ride is never comfortable. Although, because they've retuned the suspension for this latest Nismo model, nor is it horribly uncomfortable. I've driven very high performance GT-Rs in the past that beat you up with how tough their ride quality was. This one, it doesn't quite do that. The comfort suspension mode takes just enough out of the dampers that you can use this car on the motorway in town and not feel like your spine is going to get absolutely smashed to pieces. But, as you can probably see, when you get out onto these quicker A roads, it doesn't deal with the lumps and bumps in the road, so you're leaping up and down in your seat. It's quite physical, but I've driven tougher, harder riding GT-Rs than this, and I've also driven GT-Rs that tramline so much more, that hunt out ruts and cambers in the road and actually drag you left and right across the width of the road. This one isn't doing that. It's such a relief, I have to say, because it's such a fast and physical car that you need to have as much confidence as possible. What I've always loved about GT-Rs is that They've felt huge, they've been heavy, they absolutely pummel the road into submission. That's what they do, and yet they've done it with really delicate, crisp, talkative steering. And this 2020 Nismo does the same thing. It steers beautifully for such a big car. Even though this is a lighter kind of GT-R, it's still a heavy thing. GT-Rs always have been, and yet they've always managed to have really good body control. Often when you have a heavy car, the springs and dampers just can't cope and the body tries to get away, but that's never been true of GT-Rs, and it's not true now. It's such an intense driving experience. In fact, it's a bit like you're wrestling with the car because of the way it wants to be driven in order to go quickly. That old Nissan GT-R driving style still applies. So you pile into a corner on the brakes really hard, use the adjustability in the chassis to rotate the car at the apex, and then stand on the throttle as early as you can and let the four-wheel drive system do all the work, and it'll just drag you out of the corner. And what you find is that you start getting on the power earlier and earlier and earlier, and then you come flying out of corners so fast, it's frightening. And then there's the engine. Wow, the engine.
Remember those tyres with one fewer groove in them? The turbos, which are borrowed from the GT3 racing car, have one less vane apiece than the previous model. That means they spool up faster, giving better throttle response. But power remains 600 horsepower, torque is 481 pounds-foot. This 3.8 litre twin-turbo V6 is a proper old warhorse these days. Tough, durable, powerful and eminently tunable. Nissan says the 2020 GT-R Nismo will hit 62 miles per hour in 2.8 seconds and run on to 196 miles per hour.
600 horsepower, and all of those horsepower, they arrive in one big explosion. Really, you need 4,000 RPM dialed up before the turbos start boosting really, really hard. But from 4,000 RPM onwards, it's just like lighting a firework. The engine just goes bang, up to 7,000 RPM or so. And my God, the car flies between 4 and 7. You just keep pulling the gears and it keeps exploding down the road. Wow. And it even sounds good, this 2020 Nismo. There's a bit of tune to the soundtrack, a bit of musicality from that V6. But it's the speed that's frightening. Good Lord. And the dual clutch gearbox, it's pretty ancient. By modern standards, it's been around a long time, but it still works really well, both up and down, quick shifts. It's staggering how quick this car, given its size, given its weight, is along a little bumpy British B road. It's got so much grip, so much traction, get on the power so early, with all that performance, all that power, you just smash the road to pieces. I know a lot of people just don't get the Nissan GT-R driving experience, but in this 2020 Nismo, it's ramped all the way up. It's so extreme, it's so hardcore, that surely you just can't help but find it exciting. I love it, it's so physical. It's almost like you're fighting the car. It's not like a 911 GT3 that floats along the road, that really works with you. This car, you have to hold on, grab the steering wheel as hard as you can, and pretty much have a scrap with it. Oh, it's a monster. It's a monster. I think this is the best of the really hardcore GT-Rs I've ever driven. I'm talking the track editions, I'm talking Nismos. It's really good. This 2020 GT-R Nismo, it's like a weird collision between the brutal, the physical, I'm talking size, weight, grip, I'm talking the way the power is delivered, and the delicate and the precise, That's the steering. It's surprisingly delicate and accurate. I'm talking that adjustability that you get mid-corner, that rotation. Also the way you can make the car slide just a little bit under power, away from a corner. In some ways, it's a sledgehammer, this car. In other ways, it's a scalpel.
This is the best GT-R Nismo yet. Every bit as exciting as earlier versions, but easier to live with and better suited to British roads. It would be a fine, valedictory tour for the R35 GT-R. But I can think of one reason why you might not want a 2020 Nismo, or rather 180,000 reasons. It's very expensive. But if it really is the last in the line, maybe it'll one day be the GT-R everybody wants. Thank you for watching this PistonHeads video. Remember to comment below and subscribe to the PistonHeads YouTube channel, and also head over to pistonheads.com.